I want to give you a little more information about the final project. So for the final project, you will need to write an abstract, create a research poster, and then attend the poster session during the final exam period and talk about your project. So you should be prepared to kind of give like a 5 minutes or maybe a little less speech about your project, sort of walking people through it, and also be prepared to answer questions. So the way that a poster session works is that the researcher stands next to their physical poster and other people sort of mill around and ask them questions about their poster. So for our class, since there's not a whole lot of us, we're going to split into two groups. And so half the people will present their posters and then the other half of people will walk around and learn about the projects. And I'll also ask you to sort of jot down some feedback for your peers, but we'll do that day. I want to show you an example of what a poster looks like. This is something that I did a few years ago when I taught at another university. So this is an actual student's poster. And I haven't quite finished it yet, but I'm also going to give you like a template. So I'm going to give you sort of more help about what font size and how to put this whole thing together. But for now, I think it's helpful to just see an example. So this is from a student from a few years ago, and your poster is going to be better than this because this poster kind of has too many numbers on it. It's a little bit too busy, but you see that everything's here on one poster. The student had an introduction. She had some background information. She had data and methods, where the student describes the data set, describes their variables, and then they have some tables and some figures for their results. But what we're going to do for our class is try to have a little bit less text on the poster, and then if need be, have a handout. And she did some cross-tabulation, and so she presents her p-values here, and then she has a conclusion, and she has a discussion section. But this is similar to what we're doing in that we're sort of doing it. Sometimes you can get a poster printed, it's all on one page, but we're kind of doing it the old-fashioned way, which is just printing out 8.5 by 11s and then gluing or taping them to your poster board. Okay. For the final project, you will need, just to be clear, you will need to analyze a minimum of 4 variables, but it's your choice whether it's 1 dependent, 1 independent, and 2 controls, or if you have maybe 2 research questions and then just have 1 control variable. I also want to remind you that there's a couple of cool options for you. So one, you can submit an abstract to the Eastern Sociological Society annual meeting. So that is due December 15th. And there's a meeting in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And if you get accepted, I would work with you. I would go with you, work with you to get funding, to get the university to help pay for the trip. The other thing is the ICPSR paper contest. So you would need to turn your poster into a paper. And if this is something that's interesting to you, I will work with you. We could work on this for a few weeks in January on this. So I'll post these links on Sakai. Okay. I did want to go. Okay. So just to check in with our Sakai site, there's this final project tab, so you can pull up the instructions, you can pull up the online code book, and then I have some best practice tips, and this has, I think I talked about this the other day in class, but creating a research log, saving your data frequently, saving different versions of the data just in case something gets messed up. And then project check-in number 1 is just choose 2 variables, create a research question, level of measurement, and what statistical tests you plan to run. But that we're doing after Thanksgiving. Yeah, so just to check in with the general instructions, you're going to have an abstract, you're going to have an interest, which is not on the poster, that's a separate thing you'll hand in. You're going to have an interesting title, introduction that lays out the research problem, your questions. You're going to describe the data set. You're going to talk about how you measured your variables, whether you did any recoding or scale creation. You're going to choose an appropriate bivariate test to run and explain why. And then for the results, this is something that'll sort of vary, but at minimum there should be one table and one figure. And it could be that your analysis is pretty straightforward, so you can just describe it in words and you don't need a figure or table. And that's why you might just have one of each, but you may end up having more. You may end up finding that your question, your analysis does suit itself well to multiple tables and figures. And then in the conclusion, you connect back to your research question and your hypothesis, and then provide suggestions for future research. Like what could you do next with this information? Okay. And then I also want to just point out something in the recommended steps. So I encourage you to read through this carefully, but I want to highlight to you step 7. So step 7 is limit the sample to full data, and I have created a little video tutorial of how to do that. So go ahead and click through that as well.